Okay. Welcome back to Nick Lenz's movie review, episode 147. This reviewing Spider-Man 2, released in 2004. Yes, 2 years after the last movie, which, okay, interesting. Now, with this movie, the new villain in this movie is, in fact, Dr. Octopus, which I love this interpretation of the character. Now, yes, this version of the character would take a little bit of inspiration not only from the comic books, but also from the Spider-Man animated series. You're probably thinking, what inspiration take from that one? The tiny little piece of knowledge that Peter knew Dr. Octopus before he became Dr. Octopus. Though that was due to many years in between the last time they saw each other. This time they actually met each other just prior to him becoming, well, Dr. Octopus. And they kept this little factoid basically from the comics. Peter was already established as Spider-Man before Dr. Octopus showed up. Because if you read the original comic book mentioning Spider-Man number 3, which is the debut of Dr. Octopus, he already knew who Spider-Man was due to his reputation. And they kind of basically kept it intact here, though with this version they pretty much had... Now this movie also introduced Kirk Connors. Yes, the guy who was known as the Lizard. Yes. Now, he is played by, well, he also came back for the second movie, the third movie as well. Let's see. Let's see if we can find out who played me. It's played by Dylan Baker. Yeah, he's the one who played me in this movie. Now, the thing is, he is Peter's college professor. Now, this, believe it or not, is a movie original because, okay, they keep the fact that Kirk Connors is a scientist. They keep that both in this movie and the following one. Okay, fine. But aside from that and the fact he's missing an arm, you can't say this guy, he never turns the Lizard's movie. He does it in the reboot movie that came out like 8 years after this movie did. But mostly, he appears for like a couple scenes and that's it. Also, at this point now, in the first movie, Peter Parker was in high school. This movie, he's in college. And because of him being Spider-Man, he kept missing classes. So, he said, oh yeah, your paper's overdue. I'll report on Dr. Octopus. Oh yeah, I'm playing around him. Like, okay. Lucky enough, Harry knows who he is, so he introduced him. They chat for a while about science up, which is a very good scene. And then they have the experiment. They have him put on the arms. Now, this is a different interpretation from the comic books. Because the comic books, the arms, while definitely being attached to Dr. Octopus, were not something hooked up to his frickin' spine like it was in the movie. That's the movie original. In the comic books, it was attached to a harness wrapped around the guy's waist. And this experiment basically created this special element per se, which will explain the ways. Lucky enough, Peter decided to change into Spider-Man to stop him, but this particular thing caused the death of his wife. You might be thinking, wife? Dr. Octopus got married? Well, in this version, he did. And this is by far the only version of Dr. Octopus, an alternate version of the character, where he actually got married. Yes. Yes, he did. And her name is Rosie. I'm like, interesting. Let's see. The person who played her... Huh. Rosalette. Let's see if I can find her here. Okay, the actress who played her was Donna Murphy. The actress is currently 61, and I'm looking at a picture of her from 11 years ago. Like, damn, this one looks really good for her age. Yeah, she was just in this movie. Oh yeah, she's also Niche from Star Trek Insurrection. Yep. Now, there was one character I forgot to mention who popped up in Spider-Man 1. Betty Brant. Yes, played by Elizabeth Banks. Now you're probably thinking, what, Elizabeth Banks? In Spider-Man? Yes. Yeah, she's in here. Yes, the woman who basically become very controversial the last few years thanks to what happened with Charlie's Angels. Yes, that woman who also is famous for being in the Mighty Morphin Power Rangers reboot that came out 4 years ago, believe it or not. Yep, she was in that movie, and she played Rhea Repulsa. Here she's playing Betty Brant. Now, Betty Brant, despite being Jameson's secretary, and Liz being spot on to how she's back in the comic books, not the same outfit per se, but same look. Aside from that, there's no romantic chemistry between her and Peter. Like, there's no mention of the fact these two were a couple. Because the thing with Betty Brant is, Betty Brant was technically the first person that Peter Parker dated in the comic books. Yeah, he had a crush on Liz Allen, but that went nowhere. Betty Brant was technically his first girlfriend. They dated kind of mostly during the first year of the comic book, and then they broke up. Well, due to her brother dying at the hands of apparently Spider-Man. And also, this was an issue featuring werewolves. Yeah, though it was later reckoned her brother survived. And Betty Brant is noteworthy for being with Flash Thompson more than being with Peter. Yep. And the thing with Betty Brant is, her only appearance in the movie is, okay, let's have her sit at her desk the whole movie and doing nothing. Robbie Robinson is in this movie. Yes. Robbie. Now, if you see how he looks in the comic books, he's a very somewhat muscular guy. In the movie, he's kind of, let's say, very, very bulky in the midsection. Like, okay, I like the fact that Captain Black, which kudos for the cast director, he makes first appearance in the movie here, and the fact he's got white hair, just like it is in the comics. Good job on the cast director's part. Now, I know who the actor is who played. Now, Robbie himself does be in his movie. Now, Robbie's played by... Let's see if I can find him here. He's played by Bill Nunn. Which, okay, that's actually pretty cool. And, yeah, like I said, kudos for getting this part of Robbie right. And the fact that, well, he works for Jameson. He's basically the chief editor. Now, he's always wearing a suit coat a lot of the time in the movie when you see him. In the comics, he generally doesn't wear a suit coat. Most of the time you see him, he wears a shirt and tie per se, but has his sleeves rolled up. That's typically how the guy dresses in the comics. In the movie, he wears suit coat, which, okay, that's fine. And he's basically not exactly like Jameson. Now, he's portrayed like he is in the comic books, basically, where he's not like Jameson, where he doesn't believe that Spider-Man's a menace. Also, when they're discussing naming Dr. Octopus, they name drop Doctor Strange. Like, okay, that name is good, but it's already taken. Kind of confirming that Doctor Strange exists in the Sam Raimi movies, which I thought that was kind of cool. My only guess is the reason why they threw that in, because basically Stan Lee he wrote Doctor Strange's first appearance, and also the fact that Marvel writers love teaming up Spider-Man with Doctor Strange. I should probably make basically like a special video where, like, of what superheroes Spider-Man frequently teams up with over the years. Doctor Strange being one of them. Doctor Strange himself would not have first live-action interaction with Peter until 2018. 14 years after this movie was released. And there's a trope that this movie kind of continues from the last movie that also is the next movie as well. Mary Jane gets kidnapped. In the first movie, it was by the Green Goblin. In this movie, she's kidnapped by Dr. Octopus, which the first time that Spider-Man, a couple times basically, Peter battles Dr. Octopus before his final battle with the guy. One of the times battles was at a bank, looked up he's helped basically by May Parker. Thanks to the reason why they're there is because it deals with something related to Ben Parker. And they fight on a train, which according to the commentary, they had to shoot that scene in Chicago. Because they said that there's no elevated trains in New York. Probably not Manhattan, but according to my dad, they have elevated trains in Brooklyn. Not Manhattan anymore, but Brooklyn's got them. Which is interesting, though, the fact that they did that. Yeah, like I said, they mentioned this in the commentary. Yes, I actually went to I listened to the commentary of this movie. It's quite interesting listening to Sam Raimi. Now you're probably thinking, okay, what is the cameo done by Bruce Campbell? I know, I don't... Oh yeah, I remember what his cameo is. His cameo is a host, where Peter basically is on a date with Mary Jane Watson. Now, I think it was Mary Jane. I think it was Peter running late, and actually it was actually Mary Jane. And of course, well, in this movie also we get used to John Jameson. Yes, in one of his 2 ever live action appearances. He wouldn't appear again until 14 years later in Venom. I'll discuss that in a future video. And John Jameson himself didn't really do very much. He just shows up in his military uniform. Like, apparently he's engaged Mary Jane Watson. Like, when the heck these two get hooked up? Now, you're probably asking, Nick, did these two ever interact in the comics? Yes. Did these two ever become a couple? No. This is something that the writers of the movie made up. And at no point did Mary Jane ever get engaged as a guy. Much less leave him at the frickin' altar. Now, John Jameson would get married in the comics, but not to Mary Jane Watson. Okay, you're probably asking, who did he marry? He married She-Hulk. That's not a joke. He was, in fact, married to her very briefly. And apparently She-Hulk, at one point, had to get a fight with her own father-in-law, a.k.a. J. Jonah Jameson. With basically an old Spider-Bot and Spider Slayer-Bot. And they got along perfectly fine. Though it was later revealed that their marriage was basically... It happened because of frickin' Star Fox. Yes, frickin' Star Fox. Brett, thank you. Wait, you mean Star Fox in 1964? No. Thanos' brother. Yes, Thanos was a brother named frickin' Star Fox, who at one point was an Avenger. And also we have this thing in the movie where this is a plot that they start here, which is continuing the next movie, where Harry hates Spider-Man. The reason being because he blames Spider-Man for the death of Norman Osborn. They have a really cool ending scene with him in the movie where he gets so angry he sees like an image of his father and he just throws like an object at a mirror and smashed it. And apparently hits an actual door. Yes, and what's behind this door? A bunch of goblin suits, and pumpkin bombs, and a goblin glider. Okay, did Norman Osborn basically have a spare set? But I thought this was really cool at the time. Yep, and let's see, what else? Oh yeah, how was Dr. Octopus defeated? He apparently, the device he was making apparently affected New York City. So, in order to save the city, he committed suicide. Yep, Peter was not involved with the man's death at all. It was actually not accidental suicide like it was with Norman Osborn. This one was done on purpose. And, well, Mary Jane and Peter become a official couple by the end of the movie. And, well, that's that. In the case of sequels, this is considered one of the best ones ever made for movie sequels because of how well paced it's made and the fact it feels like a really good sequel. And just really good. I give the movie roughly a 9 out of 10. It's a good movie. I forgot to give a rating for the first Spider movie. I give that one also a 9 out of 10. Now, one thing at least I appreciate about Spider-Man 2, it does have plot threads to be explored in Spider-Man 3, which came 3 years later in 2007, the year I graduated from high school. When this movie was released, I was, let's see, I think it was like 16 this movie came out, and it was after I saw this movie, that's when I started reading comic books. Yep. So thanks after seeing this movie, I start reading comic books. So, fun little factor I forgot to mention when it comes to this movie. Now, on DVD I have for the first movie, they actually have a biography, a lot of the Spider-Man villains, like various comic books they appeared in. And you actually get a chance to see sort of, let's say, a walkthrough of the first 3 levels of the video game adaptation of this very movie. The game based upon this movie, well, the version I had a bug in it where it kept freezing. Yeah. Though this one, now, the game based upon the very first movie is a pure fun game of the play. And you get a chance to play, like I do various cheat codes of this game. Like, you get a chance to unlock all the moves. You get to unlock all the levels. You could even, let's say, change the suit that Spider-Man wears. Like, You can actually change it where he dresses like frickin' Shocker. We get to type in Herman Schultz as a cheat code. Yes. You also get dressed as Mary Jane Watson, which they actually have a different ending scene in the movie where in it has some abandoned building, and in the game was a Brooklyn Bridge. Oh, and here's the thing that you can do. If you basically play the ending credit sequence, like you're Mary Jane Watson, and there is a moment in there that even my friends and I, basically, our brothers school once, even basically they thought this was weird, where they had, like, the end of the game basically had Mary Jane make out with Spider-Man. In the cutscene, you're basically Mary Jane in the suit, and you have Mary Jane making out with Mary Jane Watson. I am not kidding about that. Though, the aspect of this game, where you get a chance to go all around the city, do this various different stuff, being open world, they actually would keep this concept for the games going forward, or was made by, I think it was Activision who made all the games. Now, in the case of the games based upon these movies, they're actually really good. I played a little bit of Spider-Man 3, was good. I have heard the games based upon the Amazing Spider-Man movies are not very good. Nope, not very good indeed. Yep. Oh, and another thing, like, if you played the video game part, why in the world is Peter being a pizza delivery guy? Well, he was that before apparently he started working for Jameson, and he drove a motorcycle, which in the comics he did too. Very briefly, he apparently decided to name Jameson as sort of his benefactor for the motorcycle, which he stopped using after like a couple. He had the motorcycle very briefly, and then he stopped using it. And apparently Jameson just completely forgot about the fact he had a motorcycle. It's like people know more for having the Spider-Mobile than having a motorcycle. And the thing with Spider-Man is, he's something kind of with me. I don't have regular driver's license, neither does Spider-Man. In the comics, he does occasionally drive vehicles, but not all the time. I mean, the only vehicle he's nowhere for driving is the Spider-Mobile. Yep. And there's no denying. Now, this movie also was the first movie I ever saw with Al Maloney in it. I had seen a couple movies after this, basically him in it. One, of course, is the movie Luther, where he was like the only actor I recognized in there. He was also in the controversial Da Vinci Code. He was in that one too. Now, the thing is, Ron Howard mentioned that he wanted the cast characters who their nationalities actually matched the characters. Technically, Al Maloney is American, but he's of Hispanic descent. Because the thing is, his character in the movie was Hispanic, but the actor is Hispanic descent. So, despite the fact he did break the rule for that, but at least he cast a good actor. There was also a movie he started with Salma Hayek, which, from what I heard, it was a movie that she actually wanted to go off the ground for years. It was a biopic about a Mexican painter. He was in that one, where he played the cheating husband of the actual artist, per se. Mm-hmm. Yes, but in the case of some of the other actors, Kirsten Dunst, aside from this movies, well, let's see. There was her early appearance on TNG, Small Soldiers. There was also, I think it was like Suicide Girls, Crazy Beautiful, Bring It On, and that was it. That's all I've seen her in. Tom Maguire, I've seen her in one movie. It was a similar with the singer Jewel. Yep. Franco, I have never seen anything outside of this one. Not really, no. Let's see. Well, that's going to be it for this movie. Yeah. Spider-Man 2, great movie. Can't wait for, well, I'm going to discuss Spider-Man 3 tomorrow. And the problems this movie had. Oh boy, this movie. You know how the first two movies had only one villain? Oh boy, the third movie had freaking 3 villains. Which people hated this concept of the movie. Yep. And I'll also talk about briefly in there about what the plans were for Spider-Man 4. Yes, there was plans for Spider-Man 4 before they did the reboot in 2012. Yep. But yeah, that's it for Single Review, and that's going to be it for reviews today, because, well, it's getting kind of late, and that's all I want to do tonight. So tomorrow, I expect to see a review for Kate's Clothes, because I know that's coming out tomorrow. A movie review, least one I can think of. Oh, maybe a comic corner. Okay, to next video. Bye.